This week on Hardwood Heavens, we head to sunny Southern California to one of the most famous courts in college basketball.
Pauley Pavilion is the greatest thing that ever happened to me.
It's Pauley Pavilion, home to the UCLA Bruins. Coming up next on Hardwood Heavens. In Southern California, on the west side of Los Angeles, is the Westwood neighborhood, home to the UCLA campus. The university has the highest enrollment in the state, and its sports programs boast 99 NCAA titles. That's more than any other university in the country. Perhaps the finest Bruin program on campus is the men's basketball team. Their legacy was created on one of the most hallowed hardwoods in basketball, Pauley Pavilion.
Pauley, for a lot of people in LA, is it's a landmark. It's a historic place. It's got a lot of tradition, a lot of history. When I was growing up in Inglewood, California, there were two basketball places that you wanted to play. The Forum, Pauley Pavilion.
Seconds on the shot clock. He'll get it to Collison. He'll drive, stop, follow. Off the dribble drive.
You know, playing in Pauley was a dream come true for me. I mean, being a guy from Los Angeles whose father went to UCLA, you know, I always heard the stories about Pauley Pavilion and the great John Wooden, Wizard of Westwood.
You can't think of it without thinking of Coach John Wooden first. I mean, it's just, you just can't get past that.
It was a Walt Hazzard, a Gail Goodrich, a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. The place was packed, so it became the sixth player, if you will.
Seeing the banners as you walk in and seeing the national championship banners is so special. You know, most arenas in the country, they'll show you a banner for going to the Final Four or win a league championship. And Pauley Pavilion is strictly national championships.
We used to always say that, you know, it gave us 10 points. We were up 10-0 before the game even started, just because of the banners.
You strive as an athlete to win championships, and to go into a stadium and look up and see 11, I mean, that's like amazing, and it's a hard feat to accomplish. You're in a place where guys, great players before you, have done it in this gym.
Put up a 16-footer. That's good.
Marcus Johnson and Gail Goodrich, Henry Bibby, the O'Bannon brothers,
Sidney Wicks, Mike Warren.
Obviously, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Walton, Jamal Wilkes.
I came in with Bill Walton and Greg Lee.
Lou Alcindor, now we know as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. My broadcasting partner now, Don McClain, the all-time leading scorer.
I was here during the Reggie Miller era. My head coach was Walt Hazzard.
Of all the UCLA greats, only a select few have had their jerseys retired. Gail Goodrich, Ed O'Bannon, Bill Walton, Sidney Wicks, Walt Hazzard, Marcus Johnson, and the 7'2" center Lou Alcindor, now known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
I think the thing that separated Kareem from all the other players of his era who were the same size was his grace. You know, Kareem was 7'2". Most guys, most 7-footers at the time were big clods. You know, they were just kind of big goons. They were very uncoordinated, and they looked that way running up and down the floor. Now, Kareem was the first guy who at 7'2" actually moved like a guard who was 6'3", 6'4", and it was just beautiful to watch.
Bill Walton then was, I'm sorry, my friend, but you were whacked. I mean, you were really whacked. I think one of the remarkable stories about Bill Walton is not his basketball career, but his broadcasting career. Because when we were in school together, he just really didn't feel comfortable talking.
The list of great UCLA players goes on and on, but their contributions can only be overshadowed by the coaching legend, the Wizard of Westwood himself, John Wooden. Wooden, a Hall of Famer both as a player and a coach, led the Bruins from 1948 to 1975. During his tenure, his teams had 4 undefeated seasons, and during the 60s and 70s, they won 10 of the program's 11 NCAA titles, including 7 consecutive championships.
It is his program. The first day when I was announced the head coach at UCLA in my press conference, right here in the other room, I explained to the media and everybody, first and foremost, there'll never be another John Wooden.
Coach Wooden stands for class. He's arguably the greatest coach in any game.
He was 149-2 in Pauley Pavilion.
There's just no way to describe John Wooden. He's a philosopher, a motivator, a teacher, and everything deals with life. You know, basketball is just part of it. When I see John Wooden sitting there in the stands, I instantly want to become a selfless team player that's all about winning, because that's what he epitomized, winning. You try to go out and do what he preaches, the ultimate team concept. So every time you see him, that reminds you of just being a great team player, and not only a team player, but a person off the court.
John Wooden had a phenomenal run at Pauley Pavilion as UCLA's head coach, but some of the other modern UCLA head coaches include Larry Brown, Jim Herrick, Steve Lavin, and current coach Ben Howland.
This is the greatest history and tradition in all of college basketball. 11 national championships, and Pauley Pavilion was built right when the corner was being turned in terms of really turning UCLA into probably the most special period of collegiate athletics of any major sport.
For 42 years, Pauley Pavilion has been the home to the UCLA Bruins. It opened its doors in 1965 and was named for local oil man and UCLA regent Edwin W. Pauley. He donated 1/5 of the construction costs.
My grandfather was a big donor to the UC system in general. He was a big UCLA Bruin. He went to all the basketball games. He went to all the football games. And I think the plan was that he wanted to provide a facility here in Los Angeles at UCLA for UCLA basketball that would be state-of-the-art.
Before we had Pauley Pavilion, my first 3 years out there, we played in the 3rd floor of the old men's gym. After that, we played in 7 different places. Pan Pacific, Venice High School, Long Beach Auditorium, Long Beach College, and 7 or 8 different places.
Coach Wooden took an active interest in the design of Pauley Pavilion, and one of his suggestions was to keep fan seating away from the baseline in order to give both teams a sense of fair play.
I've always felt that when you're building a new place, you shouldn't have that first row right up there crowding the people.
The bleachers can also be retracted for a practice facility and other events at the school.
I wanted to have a cross court at the far end where we could have freshman practice at the same time the varsity and freshmen start a half hour later, and then they could come over on the main court and I could be with them the last half hour. And we had a curtain that's still up there, 12-foot to canvas that would drop down automatically, and it would serve as a sound, ball, and sight barrier while we're having practice.
It's a great practice facility, so from a coaching standpoint, it's really special. We have 4 full-length college basketball floors when you're talking about it being sideways. When you look at how it's built with great sight lines. The sight lines are outstanding for the fans to be able to see the game. They're as good as it gets of any arena in the country.
In my 27 years at UCLA, Pauley Pavilion is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. In practicing in the old gym on the 3rd floor with wrestling at the end and gymnasts on the side and having to sweep and mop the floor before we practiced every day.
Nick Young tries to save it. court to Collison, down the lane.
About a year before I arrived at UCLA, we moved the students down to where they're now courtside. And one of the important, and I think most important aspects to collegiate athletics is the involvement of the students. It's for the students. Our players are student athletes. And our courtside, across from our bench, I mean, our fans, the student body are absolutely terrific. And I think that really, everybody else feeds off of that. In other words, all the donors and the alums that come back, that reminds them of when they were students and they were kids.
I think the more students you can get closer to the game and great seats, the better. And the atmosphere at Pauley Pavilion is a tribute to the athletic department and the students and the community. That's why people come to the games. It's the Pauley atmosphere.
Other UCLA teams which play at Pauley include men and women's volleyball and gymnastics. There are future plans to renovate Pauley Pavilion to help modernize the fan concourse area and player facilities.
The goal would be to finish the renovation on John Wooden's 100th birthday, which would be October of 2010.
I don't think Pauley Pavilion has really changed a lot. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of alumni who are clamoring that we need to update Pauley Pavilion and bring it up to par with some of these other arenas around the country. But, you know, I like the old school arenas.
I don't ever want to see him change Pauley Pavilion. I mean, nowadays, you know, basketball is big business, and they're building big arenas, and it's all about corporate suites and sponsorship and making money. But Pauley Pavilion is, I mean, this is tradition. This is where it all happened. This is where the championship banners hang. When I walk into this building and there's a smell, you know, and everything that goes through my body, there's an adrenaline rush.
In December of 2003, the Hardwood at Pauley Pavilion was dedicated to legendary head coach John Wooden and his late wife, Nell. Over 60 UCLA players reunited that day to pay tribute to the legendary coach.
And seeing players from the different years and different teams and the different ways people know each other, I mean, it was just a special, truly a special day. Not just for the coach, which I believe it was, but for each of us that were fortunate enough to be there.
I think that's pretty good of him to say, I want that court named Nell and John Wooden Court. Not just Wooden Court or John Wooden Court, had to include his wife, who he still misses dearly, I know, to this day.
Oh, that was wonderful. A lot of players, but I've had close association with all my players, and I've seen them together on other times. But that was very nice. There were a lot more showed up, and alumni and people have been instrumental on the building coming about and so on. And it was quite a thrill.
When I hear the term hardwood, what springs to mind is the surface that you play on. When you're in the moment, kind of absorbed with the moment of being out there and hearing the crowd and going out there and being like a improvisational jazz musician and just making up stuff out there.
Well, I love the sound of a basketball bouncing on the hardwood. I love the sound of sneakers squeaking on the hardwood. I love to come into the gym and be the only one in there and just hear yourself walking or hear the ball bouncing.
Young, top of the circle, has a bomb move, they steal it. Here comes Luke Richard into the front court. He'll come down the lane.
And when I think of hardwood, I think of the sport that's the best spectator sport of all, because it's played on the smallest area with the largest object, and the fans are so close to it that they always know more than the coaches.
It's 12 hours from tip-off, and the fans outside of Pauley Pavilion are waking up and gearing up for the big game against the rival USC Trojans.
And I tell you, we have a great student section. As you know, sometimes they're camping out for days, and they're actually sprinting in about an hour before the game to get the best seats right across from the benches.
In the beginning of the year, you can buy tickets for every single football game and basketball game, and so you're guaranteed admission to Pauley, but sitting outside overnight guarantees you sitting on the floor.
We got the most national championships, and basketball's where it's at. We got such a history with, you know, the wooden years and everything, and we're looking great this year. Polls came out ranked number 2, and, you know, we got to take down those Trojans tomorrow.
So we have our UCLA student group. It's called The Den. They wear the blue shirts. They kind of head up everything in the student section. But the roll call, before the game, we all basically give a shout out to every player on the court during their warm-ups. Yell Crew and Pauley, this is our playground. We're here just to facilitate cheers in the crowd. That's our primary job. The student section is the most powerful of all the sections. They're the loudest, they're the craziest. They're the ones that are going to really create that home court advantage, and that's where we focus most of our time.
The court being a 6-man is definitely true, and especially when the place really got wound up. And not that the fans aren't great all the time, but there's specific games where, you know, it was really, really electric in here, and you could feel it the minute you walked out.
My favorite cheer at UCLA is the 8 clap. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. That's the 8 clap. USC, UCLA are two of the most historic programs in the country and two of the most notable programs in the world. So, you know, the tradition is strong.
The rivalry between UCLA and USC goes back, you know, 100 years. And it's truly special when you consider the two schools share the same city. They're downtown, we're over here on the west side.
All the students and fans, that's all they talk about is the rivalry. So we're not just playing for us, we're playing for everybody in the community. I mean, it's like one of those games where they hate us and we'd hate them, and we really want to go out and win.
Of the 2 schools in LA, the number 19 ranked Trojans going against number 2 UCLA.
The Victory Bell has been a part of the local rivalry since the 1940s. The trophy is given to the cumulative winner of last year's USC-UCLA sports competitions. The Victory Bell is paraded outside of Pauley as a reminder of bragging rights on the eve of this crosstown classic.
Let's go Bruins! Let's go Bruins! Let's go Bruins!
The origin of UCLA's blue and gold colors stems from the university's early association with Cal Berkeley, when UCLA was known as the southern branch of the University of California. The blue is representative of the ocean and local wildflowers, while the yellow symbolizes the Golden State's sunsets and California poppy. Similarly, UCLA's mascot was once a cub, a baby bear version of the Berkeley Bear and Bruin. In the 1920s, it was changed to a more intimidating grizzly, which conflicted with the University of Montana. Shortly thereafter, a Berkeley student group decided to give the Bruin name specifically to UCLA.
Joe Bruin, that's our mascot. He's a funny character. He's in a Bruin suit, he dances around. He has the UCLA basketball jersey on. So that's cool to look over and see him playing around with the fans.
It is a 3-point game now, 38-35. That even gets a smile from Arnold Schwarzenegger across the way.
Having played 10 years in the NBA, college basketball and college tradition is completely different than any other type of athletics. There is a purity about the game at the college level.
Penetrate leads inside to
For me to be the head coach at UCLA is, a dream come true. Something I never thought was possible or attainable. I still have to pinch myself all the time. This is still surreal that I'm actually the head coach at UCLA.
All the history, all the tradition, you're just part of it. You're just part of it, but you feel lucky because it's something that's so great here at UCLA. You really cherish it.
It was a definite privilege for me to play at UCLA, playing for Coach Wooden, who, in my mind, is the greatest coach of all times, and the legacy and the tradition that he established.
This place is just, not only the gym, but the university. I have a lot of friends who, this is the only time that I see them is during the season, and so it in a sense, is an extended family. When I walk into this place, even when it's empty, I can sometimes hear people yelling and screaming for our team. I love UCLA. It's part of my soul and spirit.
I love playing. I love playing here. I love these four letters. They're nothing like them. And, I wish that I could roll back the time and come back to playing here.
For Hardwood Heavens, I'm Brent Musburger.